we're going to take a look at some more examples of user experience in practice on streets. We're going to look at different cities through different modes and different principles. So let's take a look. So here we are in Frankfurt, Germany. We're in the central station. I'd like to point out some key things here that the station does. Here at the top you can see when the person enters the station, they see symbols, the S-Bahn, U-Bahn, tram, bus. These are standardized things in Germany throughout stations that are used to show people typical types of transport. For local Germans, it's generally straightforward as to what each one will help them to do. Perhaps for someone who's not from there, there may be a bit more thinking involved, but generally for locals, this will be an example of the recognition rather than recall principle. We can look over here as well. There is a point in the station where you can learn more about the station, learn more about how to get places, where you see this tourist information point. This is important to have help and documentation available for those who need it. It's not required, it's not information thrown in people's face if they don't necessarily want it, but it is there just in case. Next, we have some extra information here on the station signs in the departure times that provide context. Very helpful to know when you're looking for a train is what time it currently is. Here, if you see it's 16:53, you can reference and see what time it actually is now. And you can also see other important things about related trains that will be leaving that it can help you plan your trip. And finally, there is really a match between the system and the real world here in the layout of the station. You can look at different tracks. For example, here you see track 23. Logically, you'd expect 24 to be behind that, or 22, 21, etc. So the layout should be easily understandable for people. And it's important here also the station stays out of people's way. How it does this is people actually don't need to enter some sort of a turnstile in the train itself. They have to buy a ticket, and for many people that already can purchase the ticket, they just go straight onto the train. So if you're running there at the last seconds, it's easier for you to get in and do the journey as you need to. Great, and now we're going to take a look at principles at another context. And now we find ourselves in Antwerp in Belgium, and this is an example of general public space. When you arrive on the street, you really see sort of the area. What is it like? It really is a place where you need to move slow because there are objects, there are trees, and that's why this street makes a good first impression. It really is clear what you are trying to do with the street. The street also provides a very strong information sense. This means that it's clear as to what the uses are, as to how you should be moving through it, etc. It also, with the pavement, uses aesthetic and minimalist design. This principle is very straightforward. You don't need much painting, you don't need any markings, etc. You can just use these tiles. It's quite straightforward, and people will move slowly on them. It also uses these signs here, the Wonerf, 20 is enough signs, and this is an example of consistency in standards. In different parts of Belgium, Wonerf is used to indicate a residential area where you need to go slow, and it really is a shared space between different modes. And finally, the street also uses constraints appropriately. These parked bikes and these trees force you to slow down. You can see if you want to move through the street, you have to go from one side to the other, and these objects prevent you from speeding too much. And now on to another street in another city. This is an example of principles for a street for cycling in Utrecht in the Netherlands. Now, to start, this street uses constraints very appropriately because this is not a through route for cars. This is what's called a cycle street in the Netherlands. And this is acting as an access road. So cars are able to drive on this pavement, but then they can no longer continue straight. So they turn right. And because of that, car traffic is much lower on the street, and it's only used for access. So this bollard uses the constraint perfectly. The street provides a very strong information scent because the red asphalt is very, very clear that this is a place where cycling has priority, where you need to go slow, and this is also an example of consistency in standards because this is used throughout the Netherlands, this red asphalt. Other things that this street has, creating a hierarchy that meets people's needs. So this is something, it fits into the larger street system where you're able to ride as a car driver quickly on this main road. And as a resident, you want a slower street, a resident that's living on the sides of this image over here. You're able to access things as you need with whatever mode that you want to use, but you are able to do that in different spots. So it connects to a larger network. This also limits distractions. There is a bike lane sign here to make this clear, but there's a whole, for this sort of effective but simple concept, you don't need too much explaining because it's more intuitive. An example of something that's interesting to bring up is to diagnose and recover from errors. So one thing that could be improved potentially here is this for drivers. So generally, if you're local in the Netherlands driving, you're aware that you can turn around a certain way, make it back to the main road. However, but if you are a visitor and you're not used to this, you may come onto the street, you may reach the end where you can't go further because of the bollard, and you may not be sure what to do and how to return back to your main journey. Perhaps there could be something that this street could have to help these users to understand to get back onto the street that they need to be on for driving. And finally, this does make actions reversible. Because the street is a slower space, it's much easier for people to turn around if they need to, for people to stop if you're cycling, for people to stop and rest. If you drop something, it's not a problem to go pick it up because you're not having loads of car traffic rushing behind you. And if you're a driver and you do need to turn around, you are able to turn around.